Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So it's Tuesday, which means it's time for a tier list. Every single Tuesday on this channel, we do a tier list. And I thought with the offseason approaching that we would do some type of an offseason tier list once the Stanley Cup final is over, whether it's tonight, whether it's in 3 days, whether it's next Monday after Game 7. I'm going to do a rapid fire, like go by division, every single team, and break down what I think they should do this offseason. But I thought for an offseason tier list, it would be a fun idea to kind of look at which teams have a lot of work to do this offseason and which maybe have a little bit of a lighter offseason that they have to do. And this isn't really the draft. This is free agency and trading. So here are the different tiers. We got a ton of work to be done. This is like 4+ key free agents that they need to re-sign, maybe trade a guy. Few big changes is 1 or 2 legit top of the lineup players that are either free agents or free agents that aren't a guaranteed thing to get re-signed, or a couple guys that you might have to end up trading. Moderate activity is replace a couple middle sixers, a second pair of defensemen, nothing really serious. Most of your core is locked up. Couple moves is like you have $10 million in cap space, so you sign, it's not that much done. And then minor tweaks is just bringing in some depth, maybe bringing in some experience for your younger core. You don't really have that much pressure on you given the circumstances. And up first for the Chicago Blackhawks, I'm going to go with a couple minor tweaks unless they land some type of like Jake Gensel, which I don't think is honestly that good of an idea, but just because he's like 29 years old and is going to want an 8-year contract. I think they're just going to bring in maybe some veteran guys. Of course, some of their young guys are ready to take that next step to the NHL level. So really not that much. They're focused on the draft, not so much free agency and making big splash trades. The Anaheim Ducks, I think they're going to make a couple moves. They're not going to be like aggressively going out and trying to win now, but I could see, like with last year in the offseason, they signed 2 veterans in Alex Killorn and Radko Gudas. I thought the Radko Gudas deal has looked very good. Killorn, not so much, but I can see some of that. Pick up a couple more wingers or maybe a second pairing defenseman to help them take that next step towards being hopefully a team in the mid to high 70s, because the last couple of years have been pretty disappointing. Montreal Canadiens, moderate activity. I could see them maybe going out and getting like a Martin Necas. I wouldn't bet on it, but I think they're definitely going to be making some moves to get up into that, maybe not be in a wild card spot, but definitely play competitive games come March, come April, instead of being worried about the draft. Next year, it wouldn't be a failed season if they end up picking between 3rd to 6th overall, but ideally for them, they want to be actually somewhat in the mix. Tampa Bay Lightning, Stamkos is a free agent, but outside of that, I think he probably is going to re-sign, and they already made a pretty big trade with Ryan McDonough. So I think it's going to be moderate activity. It's really find a way to re-sign Stamkos and then maybe bring in some okay depth pieces. There's not too much. Most of their core is locked up for the most part. Dallas Stars, they got a couple big changes that they could contemplate. Actually, no, because they also need to re-sign Thomas Harley. When looking at it, they got to re-sign Thomas Harley. They got to potentially offer an extension to Wyatt Johnson, who has 1 more year left on his deal, as well as Duchesne and Chris Tanev being unrestricted free agents. They have some decisions to make. They got some clarity in terms of Joe Pavelski retiring, but this can be some pretty active offseason for the Dallas Stars heading into the summer. Maybe even buying out a Ryan Suter in order to keep one of those guys. Pittsburgh Penguins, I don't think that they really have the flexibility to make that many moves when looking at it. I don't know what the hell the plan is in Pittsburgh right now if they're going to try to be aggressive, but they don't really have the salary cap space. They more so spent it last year on guys like Ryan Graves per se, so this offseason is probably going to be a little bit more quieter. New York Islanders, moderate activity just because I think they're going to be in the market for a legit top 6 forward. You look at a guy like Nikolai Ehlers, I think is a perfect fit in New York. So I think they're going to try to go swinging like Lou Lamoriello. Will they end up being the left at the altar like with some other free agents in the past? We'll see, but I think there are going to be some activity. You might see Anders Lee get shipped out, JG Peugeot get shipped out. I think they're going to be aggressive in terms of solving what they need. Seattle Kraken, they have some money to spend, but I don't expect them to be that. I'll move them up to moderate activity. I think they're going to be somewhat active. They're not going to make like a splash, but I could definitely see them bringing in maybe a veteran winger to kind of boost their goal scoring that was lacking this season. I could see it. St. Louis is obviously going through some kind of retool, so I don't really think they're going to be that active in terms of trading for veteran guys to try to win now. I think they're kind of run out the team. Some of their younger guys are going to be in the NHL next season, so I'm not really expecting that much. Utah Hockey Club, this might surprise some people, but I'm going to say ton of work to be done just because of the cap space that this team has to do. Yes, Sean Thursey is their only notable free agent, but when looking at them, they have like $40 million in cap space, and I think Ryan Smith is going to want to field a highly competitive team next season. So it's a ton of work to do, not in terms of keeping the current team, but in terms of putting a competitive product out on the ice in their first season. I think the expectations are going to be for them to be battling for a playoff spot, and I think it's perfectly reasonable. So I think they're going to be very aggressive, and especially they got to convince free agents to join a market that has been unproven. Although they got all those ticket deposits, they got to sell a ton of free agents on that. They got a lot of work to do. New York Rangers, couple moves, man. I don't think they're going to be they're going to do much. When looking at it, Jacob Trouba's not going anywhere. Barclay Goodrow's not going anywhere. I think they are going to potentially sign maybe a second pairing defenseman or a top line right winger. But outside of that, I don't really see this New York team making that much of a splash coming off President's Trophy, coming off an Eastern Conference Finals. Chris Drury has made it clear that nothing massive to this core is going to happen this offseason. The Vegas Golden Knights, they got a couple I'm going to go with moderate because they definitely got a Jonathan Marchessault as an unrestricted free agent. That's going to be a tough decision that they have to make. They are going to lose Anthony Mantha and Chandler Stevenson. So if they lose all three of those guys, they're going to have to be pretty active in terms of replacing a decent amount of production for them. It's going to be an interesting offseason. Buffalo, I don't think is going to be... Buffalo, actually, no, I'm going to go with moderate activity. I think Buffalo, after they didn't really do much last offseason when looking at it. They signed like Eric Johnson and Connor Clifton. I think they need to be more wise with their money. They need to re-sign UPL. That's a very interesting restricted free agent. So I think Buffalo could be a team that's pretty active this offseason. Nashville has a decent amount of money after getting rid of Ryan McDonough. So I think they're going to be pretty active. I think that they're going to have the money to do that, and they've proven that they're at least a highly competitive team in the Western Conference. I think they're going to be able to swing some trades. You hear about them in rumors for some of the top guys. I think it would be definitely interesting for them to be aggressive like that and go out and get an actual offensive difference maker. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Nashville Predators pull the trigger on something like that. Boston Bruins, ton of work to be done in terms of re-signing Jeremy Swayman, and they have the money to go out and sign some of the top unrestricted free agents this summer. So in terms of the fact that they were a 109-point team, if they hit this offseason out of the park, they could easily win the President's Trophy. They could easily be a legit contender. So I'm going to say that there's a ton of work to be done for the Boston Bruins. Washington Capitals, minor tweaks. They're clearly heavily retooling after trading Kuznetsov, trading Mantha at the deadline. Their young guys are kind of going to start transitioning into their team. I don't expect them to go out and offer a bag to Steven Stamkos or Jonathan Marchessault in terms of winning now. They're just in this transitional phase. Florida Panthers, I think they're going to re-sign Montour and Reinhart. I'm really not too much worried. And outside of that, they really don't have that much to do. So yes, they're going to have to pay a decent amount for those guys, but I think they are going to get it done. And then beyond that, they just need to re-sign a couple guys. I don't think it's going to be some massively controversial big offseason, just because they're going to probably win the fucking Stanley Cup. So I'm going to put them in a couple moves. The Oilers, few big changes when looking at it. This offseason, they have to deal with potentially signing Bouchard and Draisaitl to extensions. They only have 1 year left. You got decisions to make on guys like Darnell Nurse, Jack Campbell, Evander Kane has 2 years left at around $5 million. Cody Ceci, there's going to be some changes that have to be made. Even if they somehow come back and win the Stanley Cup, I'm not sure you're going to run back the exact same teams because there are room for them to improve, obviously. The New Jersey Devils, few big changes. Goaltending, obviously, no fucking shit. And Tom Fitzgerald also said he's looking for like 2 forwards, 2 defensemen, and a goaltender. So I think New Jersey is going to be pretty aggressive in terms of this offseason, in terms of trading for a goalie and then signing some guys. They got to bounce back. They got to be aggressive. Calgary Flames, couple move. I'm going to go with moderate activity because Jacob Markstrom, definitely a real possibility to end up getting traded. Will he get traded? We're going to wait and see. But outside of that, they did trade most of their pending unrestricted free agents, maybe like an Andrei Kuzmenko that only has $5 million on his 5.5 or 5.8 maybe left 1 year. Maybe you end up trading him. But outside of that, they do have some cap space to spend, but I'm not sure Calgary's going to be balls to the wall trying to win now. Canucks, ton of work to be done. When looking at it, Lindholm, Zadorov, Tyler Myers, all unrestricted free agents. Dakota Joshua, Teddy Bluger, I think maybe. Sam Lafferty is as well. And then on the restricted free agency side, you got Philip Hronik. So they got big moves to make. They got big moves to make, big decisions to make in terms of re-signing guys, trading a Philip Hronik, maybe if he's asking for too much money. It is a massive offseason for the Vancouver Canucks. Colorado Avalanche, moderate activity. When looking at it, Casey Middlestad's an unrestricted free agent. They're gonna have some decisions to make. I'm gonna move up to a few big changes because there's a lot of question marks around Valery Nichushkin, obviously. Alexander Georgiev, do you maybe go down the goaltending route? So they can make some pretty big moves this offseason in terms of revamping this team. And Gabriel Landeskog, we don't even know if he's coming back. So it's definitely gonna be interesting. Minnesota Wild, minor tweaks. I mean, they're still have what, $14 million in dead cap from the goddamn Parisi and Suter buyouts. So I'm not sure if they're going to be able to be that aggressive next offseason. That money comes off the books. So next offseason, they'll probably be in few big changes, ton of work to be done once they have $14 million to spend. But right now, it's kind of just going to be run back the same group for the most part. LA Kings, moderate activity when looking at it. I think they're going to be in the market for a goaltender, but outside of that, apparently they're not going to buy out Pierre-Luc Dubois. Most of their core is under contract next season, so I don't really see how, unless they pull off some like insane trade, how they're going to massively change this offseason, but they definitely need to add a goaltender. Don't just run it back with Cam Talbot. Next up, Ottawa Senators. Definitely, it's tough when looking at them. They got a lot of question marks this offseason. They maybe could go after a goaltender, and they definitely got to trade Jacob Chychrun unless they lock him up to an extension. So they're going to be pretty active this offseason. I'm not sure on the goaltender front if they're actually going to go down it. I talked about it yesterday, but I think in terms of Jacob Chychrun, he is one of the clear, prevalent, big pieces on the open market right now. Shane Pinto's a restricted free agent. You got to deal with that, so they definitely got some decisions to make this offseason. Toronto Maple Leafs, also a few big changes. Mitch Marner could potentially get traded. They definitely need to bring in some type of top four defenseman, preferably on the right side. The goaltenders, I like Joseph Woll. I think he can be a starter down the line, but I'm not sure you're going to trust him to be the legit number one with a number two that's only going to play 20 to 25 games. So you got to bring in some type of goaltender as well. So they got a lot of things to do this offseason. Winnipeg Jets, I think you could argue, I'm going to put them in moderate activity right now, but I could understand why you'd put them in few big changes considering Nikolai Ehlers is probably out. But outside of that, I don't see a ton of movement. Cole Perfetti is a restricted free agent. I think they're going to get that done. So outside of Ehlers, who maybe on top of signing a second pair defenseman, I don't see a ton of movement for the Winnipeg Jets. Detroit Red Wings. I'm going to put them in a couple moves. I don't really think they're going to be that active this offseason in terms of signing guys. The last two offseasons, they have been very aggressive in terms of guys like Ville Husso, Chirot, Comfer. I'm blanking on some names, but they've been aggressive in terms of Shane Gothisberg, Daniel Sprong. They're going to have to re-sign some of their guys, but for the most part, I'm not sure they're going to make a ton of splash moves like they maybe did last offseason in terms of actually just going out and getting guys. They're going to have to re-sign, but I don't know about signing guys that are unrestricted free agency. The San Jose Sharks, this is a minor tweak. They're obviously going to have a couple guys come up from the AHL and college ranks to play for them next year for the team. I could see them maybe bringing in a couple okay veteran defensemen because the defense core is so goddamn bad. But outside of that, I don't see a ton getting done this offseason. The Columbus Blue Jackets, moderate activity with Don Waddell in town now. They're definitely going to trade Patrick Laine, it appears like, as well as the fact I think some other guys could be on the move. Don Waddell is going to want some type of a fresh start with this team, so I think there are going to be some serious moves made this offseason. The Carolina Hurricanes, they are like the definition of tons of work to be done when looking at it. Martin Necas, Jake Ensel, Brady Shea, Brett Pesce, Teuvo Teravainen. They have a metric shit ton of unrestricted and restricted free agents. Eric Tulsky just got the job, and he has the hardest offseason that he's probably going to have for the next 3 or 4 years if he has the job. So they got to hunker down and get stuff done. I still have the Arizona Coyotes logo. This is just a default thing. I couldn't get rid of it. Obviously not going with them. But the Philadelphia Flyers, I'm going to go with a couple moves when looking at it. They're still kind of doing this retool rebuild, but also were highly competitive last year. I think they might bring in a couple pieces, but I really don't think anything massive for the Philadelphia Flyers is going to go down this season. So yeah, here's the full tier list. If you couldn't see the Seattle Kraken, let me know in the comments. What do you think about this? Who would you move up? Who would you move down? It's going to be fun. Hopefully the Stanley Cup actually, I kind of want it to go 7, but once the Stanley Cup is over, you're going to see all my division team breakdowns in terms of what I think they're going to do this offseason. What should they do? And I'll be seeing the next one.